years after the release of the legendary tell-all book Revenge, the master himself is back with Betrayal.
The pressure is blowing up now, and Meghan Markle reportedly is not taking it well at all. Royal biographer Tom Bower has dropped claims that hit like a thunderbolt, and the reaction coming from Meghan's side is making this whole thing look even more intense. What was supposed to be just another brutal royal book story has suddenly turned into a full-blown image crisis, because instead of letting the noise pass, the pushback has dragged even more attention onto the allegations. And that is where things start looking rough, because when a public figure reacts this fast and this hard, people immediately start asking what exactly struck such a nerve. What makes this even messier is the timing. The book officially landed on March 26th, but the storm did not wait for full release day to kick off. Excerpts started leaking early, and those first details alone were enough to send headlines flying everywhere.
They're scared of Tom Bower. They're scared of what he's going to report because they know it's true. They know there's truth to it. If it's just deranged and crazy and fixation and whatever, then just ignore it. The truth will bear out. Generally, people will ignore what they seem as or deem as sort of on a crazy end of the spectrum, but that's not what Tom Bower is doing. Tom Bower is being a journalist here and reporting the facts, and the facts terrify Meghan Markle especially. She can't deal with them. She has to live in her delusional fantasy, and she hates anybody who tries.
Before most people could even get their hands on the whole book, the conversation was already out of control, with clips, quotes, and reactions spreading fast across media and online chatter. That is how these stories spiral now. One excerpt drops, one claim catches fire, and suddenly the whole public narrative starts moving at lightning speed before anyone can slow it down. Then came the response from Meghan and Prince Harry, and it was not soft, calm, or carefully distant. They came out swinging and tried to shut the whole thing down right away. In their statement, they blasted the book as a deranged conspiracy and melodrama, making it clear they were not just rejecting a few details. They were going after the entire project from top to bottom. That kind of language is sharp stuff. It shows they wanted the public to see the book not as serious reporting, not as uncomfortable criticism, but as something wild, distorted, and way out of bounds.
He has made a career out of constructing ever more elaborate theories about people he does not know and has never met. Those interested in facts will look elsewhere. Those seeking deranged conspiracy and melodrama know exactly where to find him.
But here is the problem. Sometimes when a response is that aggressive, it does not kill the story, it gives it fresh oxygen. And they did not stop with attacking the book itself. Meghan and Harry also took aim at Tom Bower personally, saying his commentary had moved past ordinary criticism and into what they described as an unhealthy obsession. That is a heavy accusation, and it changes the tone fast. Because now this is not just a fight over facts, reputation, or royal drama. Now it is a fight over motive. Their side is basically arguing that Bower is not simply a tough writer with strong opinions, but someone who has built momentum by pushing darker and more elaborate claims about people he has never actually known in private.
Harry claims he and his wife Meghan felt abandoned, a major factor in their move to California. He added he felt trapped by his family and the toxic environment he perceived he was living in.
In other words, they are trying to flip the spotlight back on him and make the audience question whether this is investigation, vendetta, or something in between. They also push the message even further, and this is where the PR side starts looking shaky.
Remember, Harry and Meghan threatened to sue at the drop of a hat, and they have never tried to sue Tom Bower because they know what he writes is true.
Meghan and Harry warned people that anyone searching for real facts should look elsewhere, while those chasing conspiracy talk would know exactly where to find it. That line was clearly meant to dismiss the book and embarrass its backers, but it also came off like a huge public challenge. Because once you tell people not to look at something, a lot of them do the exact opposite. That is basic human nature. The more dramatic the warning gets, the more curious the crowd becomes. So instead of cooling the story down, the response may have done the exact reverse and pushed even more eyes toward the book, the excerpts, and every claim now exploding around it. And that is why this moment is being talked about less like a simple denial and more like a major image stumble. Fair or not, the optics are brutal.
Yikes! Harry's cash crisis. He is flat broke, and this program has been told that as the money runs out and runs out fast, Meghan will, and I quote, be looking to replace Harry with a US billionaire. You heard me right. Meghan Markle is going to dump Harry and replace him with a US entrepreneur worth billions.
A controversial book drops. Excerpts start spreading. A fierce statement comes out fast. The author gets accused of obsession. And suddenly the public is no longer just debating what is in the book. They are also judging Meghan and Harry's response to it. That is where things get dangerous in a media war like this. Once the reaction becomes part of the story, the damage can double overnight. What we are seeing now is not just a clash over one book, but a much bigger battle over control, credibility, and who gets to shape the version of events people believe most. So what that statement really did, without saying it directly, was push Tom Bower's book into the "this is fiction, not reality" category. That was clearly the goal. But here's where things get tricky. A lot of observers are saying that move backfired hard. Instead of shutting the noise down, it actually made people more curious than ever.
But Harry and Meghan are running out of money as the millions that they accrued from the book Spare and the original Netflix deal are beginning to dwindle.
Because when you go that strong, that fast, and that loud, people don't just walk away, they lean in. And critics immediately picked up on the tone, saying it didn't feel calm or controlled, it felt defensive. And once that word gets attached, the whole narrative starts shifting. Commentators were quick to point this out. They said the aggressive pushback didn't just reject the claims, it almost signaled that something in the book hit closer than expected. Now, that doesn't prove the claims are true, not even close. But perception matters more than proof in moments like this. If the response feels emotional instead of measured, people start connecting dots on their own. And once that spiral begins, it's almost impossible to stop it from spreading. And here's the part that really stings. By going so hard against the book, Meghan's team may have accidentally turned it into a must-read overnight.
Any situation, it's just, you know, of course it's important that public figures respond to this tragedy, and it's the most ghastliest of tragedy, but you can't help thinking there's a heavy dollop of opportunism and insincerity in this, which I think most people would find, not to their liking.
No.
Free publicity at the highest level. Because now, it's not just a book sitting quietly on shelves, it's the book they don't want you to believe. And that label right there, that sells. People who never cared before suddenly want to see what all the noise is about. That's how media storms explode. Not just from what's said, but from how people react to it. Now shift focus, because this is where the controversy actually deepens. What did Tom Bower even claim that sparked all of this chaos? In his book, Revenge, Meghan, Harry, and the War Between the Windsors, he lays out a picture that is way less glamorous than the public image.
The Queen Camilla said that Harry had been brainwashed by Meghan, and that in fact members of the royal family felt that Meghan kind of changed Harry's personality, and he went from a fun-loving guy that we all loved, that we all liked, to this rather furrow-browed guy who seemed to hate everybody and everything.
According to Bower, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have been dealing with serious pressure behind the scenes. He describes them as financially stretched, socially cut off, and increasingly reliant on staying in the spotlight just to keep momentum going. That claim hits directly at one of their biggest decisions ever, walking away from royal duties and choosing financial independence. That move was supposed to be a power play, total control, global opportunities, huge contracts. And to be fair, they did land massive deals with companies like Netflix and Spotify. At the time, it looked like they had locked in a future where money and influence wouldn't be a problem at all. But here's where critics step in and start poking holes. They argue that not everything lived up to the hype.
Atmosphere. At a 2025 wheelchair basketball match, Bower claims only 43 paying spectators attended. He alleges that about 100 people were corralled around Harry and Meghan by organizers specifically for photo opportunities to create the false impression of high engagement. Well, they would never do something like that, Scott Rouse.
No.
Some of those high-profile deals didn't deliver the kind of long-term success people expected. And once that narrative starts gaining traction, it changes how every project is viewed. Take Meghan's podcast, for example. It launched with big attention, strong branding, and huge expectations. But it ended after just one season. That alone raised eyebrows. Then there was her lifestyle content push, which also struggled to really catch fire the way it was supposed to. These were meant to be major income drivers, big pieces of the post-royal strategy. But when they didn't hit the mark, critics say the pressure started building behind the scenes. And here's the part that makes the situation even tighter. While some income streams were uncertain, the expenses didn't slow down at all. Not even close. Their security costs alone are rumored to reach into the millions every single year. That's not a small detail. That's a massive financial weight. Add in property costs, staff, lifestyle, and everything else that comes with their level of visibility, and suddenly the balance starts looking way more complicated than people assumed. Even their charity work hasn't been immune to scrutiny. Reports suggest that donations tied to their foundation have seen dips, which adds another layer of pressure. Because now it's not just about personal finances, it's about public perception and philanthropic impact too. And when both sides start facing questions at the same time, the story grows fast.
Bauer suggests that the 2025 Games in Canada were overshadowed by Meghan Markle's public appearances, referring to the event as the Meghan Games. He cites Canadian executives who allegedly felt Meghan was a distraction and that her presence was more about bling than veteran rehabilitation.
So now step back and look at the full picture. A controversial book drops. A strong reaction follows. Claims about financial strain, isolation, and reliance on visibility start circulating. Business deals get questioned. Projects underperform. Costs stay sky high. And suddenly this isn't just gossip anymore. It's a full narrative battle playing out in real time. Now this is where things get even more explosive. Tom Bauer doesn't just question decisions, he goes straight into one of the most sensitive areas: Meghan Markle's influence over Prince Harry. According to the book, her ambition didn't just shape their public path, it may have played a major role in how Harry now interacts with his own family. That's a huge claim, because it suggests a shift, not just in lifestyle, but in identity, priorities, and loyalty.
In a controversial passage, Bauer describes a match between a Nigerian team and an American team. He notes that while the Nigerian players had visible physical injuries, such as missing limbs, the American players, who he says were professionally trained, suffered from PTSD. He claims the American team wheeled themselves into a private area after the game and then all got up and walked away, appearing to have no physical injuries.
Bauer paints a picture where Harry is no longer the same person people remember from his earlier royal years. Instead, he's described as more distant, more combative, and far more focused on public battles than private reconciliation. Now pause there. That doesn't automatically make it true, but it does explain why this part of the book is hitting such a nerve. Because it touches something deeply personal, not just public image, but family dynamics. And then comes one of the most talked about claims in the entire book. According to Bauer, Camilla Parker Bowles allegedly told a friend that she believed Meghan had brainwashed Harry. That word alone, it lit up the conversation instantly, because it's not subtle, it's not neutral, it's direct and loaded. And once that claim hit the public, it pushed the debate into a completely different level. Now let's be real for a second. That kind of statement is impossible to prove from the outside. It's based on reported conversations, not hard evidence. But it still fuels a massive question people keep circling back to. Is Harry acting fully on his own experiences and decisions, or is he being heavily influenced in a way that's shaping everything we see? That question keeps coming up again and again, and there's no clear answer, which is exactly why it keeps the story alive. Then the book shifts into another controversial angle, and this one hits their public image hard. Bauer argues that many of Harry and Meghan's appearances and charitable actions are more about perception than impact. That's a bold take. And one example that keeps getting brought up is Meghan's visit to Uvalde after the tragic school shooting. Critics didn't hold back on this one. They questioned whether the visit was genuinely about showing support or whether it leaned more toward visibility and optics, especially because of how quickly images and coverage of the visit circulated. Now again, that doesn't prove intent, but perception is everything in situations like this. If people feel something is staged or overly documented, the focus shifts from the act itself to the motive behind it. Bauer uses moments like that to build a bigger narrative, one where the couple has moved away from traditional royal-style service and into something that looks more like personal brand building. That idea right there is what splits public opinion wide open. Some people see it as modern, strategic, and independent. Others see it as calculated and overly focused on image. And once those two sides form, the debate doesn't cool down. It keeps growing. Of course, Meghan and Harry have completely rejected all of this. They're calling Bauer's claims deranged theories, making it clear they see the book as exaggerated and misleading. But here's the tension. Even while they deny it, critics are pointing at their public moves and saying those same actions line up with what Bauer described. And that clash between denial and interpretation, that's what keeps this whole situation burning. And just when it feels like the controversy can't get any bigger, the book starts introducing even more claims about Meghan Markle that take things into an entirely new direction. Now, this is where the story takes another sharp turn. Tom Bauer goes even further and claims that Meghan Markle didn't just participate in the Invictus Games, but allegedly shifted the spotlight toward herself. That's a serious accusation. According to him, what the Sussexes do in public isn't random at all. It's carefully planned for maximum media impact. Every appearance, every moment, every detail, all part of a bigger strategy. Meghan, on the other hand, has completely rejected this and called the claims untrue. But that hasn't stopped the debate from exploding. And here's the question people keep throwing around. If these are just wild theories, then why are so many specific examples being pointed out? That's what keeps this conversation alive and heated. Because it's not just one vague claim, it's multiple moments being dissected and questioned. The book zooms in hard on the Invictus Games, an event originally created by Prince Harry to support injured veterans and celebrate their strength. That mission has always been at the heart of it. But according to Bauer, things may have shifted over time. He argues that Meghan's involvement changed the energy of the event, especially during the 2025 Games in Canada. Instead of the focus staying fully on the athletes, he claims attention started drifting toward Meghan's presence, her appearances, and the moments surrounding her. Now let's be clear, that doesn't automatically prove anything. Big public figures attract attention everywhere they go, but critics say the balance looked off. Some observers even started using a nickname that spread fast online, calling it the Meghan Games. That label alone shows how strongly some people felt about the shift in focus. And it didn't stop there. Reports suggested that media coverage leaned heavily into what Meghan was wearing, how she was presenting herself and her public interactions, rather than highlighting the competitions themselves. That's where the criticism really picked up speed. Because the Invictus Games were never meant to be about fashion or headlines. They were meant to spotlight resilience, recovery, and real stories from the athletes. Some organizers and observers reportedly felt that this shift, whether intentional or not, took away from the core purpose of the event. That's a big deal. Because when the mission of something like Invictus starts getting questioned, the conversation becomes much bigger than just one person's presence. Bauer also throws in additional claims that make things even more controversial. He mentions reports of lower attendance at certain matches, with suggestions that crowd visuals may have been managed to look stronger on camera. Again, these are claims, not confirmed facts. But once they're out there, they feed directly into the narrative he's building. He also points out that Meghan maintained a very strong and visible presence throughout the event, emphasizing formal titles and staying front and center during key moments. Critics argue that this level of visibility can blur the line between supporting a cause and becoming the main attraction. Supporters, on the other hand, would say visibility helps bring attention to the cause. And that right there is the split that keeps people arguing. But then comes one of the most sensitive and controversial parts of the book. Bauer raises questions around the athletes themselves, which is where things get very serious very fast. He suggests that there were concerns about the classification of certain injuries in some competitions, including a wheelchair basketball match involving teams like the United States. Now stop right there. That kind of claim is extremely serious and should be treated carefully, because questioning athletes' conditions without clear evidence can cross a line quickly. And this is exactly why this section of the book has drawn so much backlash and scrutiny. At this point, the story is no longer just about Meghan, media attention, or public image. It's now touching the credibility of an event built around real people, real struggles, and real recovery journeys. And once that happens, the stakes jump to a completely different level. Now here's where the backlash hits hard from the other side. Officials and representatives connected to the Invictus Games did not stay quiet at all. They pushed back strongly against Tom Bauer's claims and defended the athletes, calling those statements disrespectful and inaccurate. That response matters, because it shows this isn't just a one-sided narrative. There are people directly involved who are rejecting parts of what's being said and standing behind the integrity of the competitors. But shift the focus again, because this next part raises a completely different kind of question. Despite all the public outrage coming from Meghan Markle's side, there has been zero legal action taken against Bauer or his publisher. No lawsuits, no cease and desist letters, no formal legal threats at all. And that stands out big time. Because in other situations, Meghan's legal team has moved fast and aggressively when they felt something crossed the line. Take this example. When Variety published a report suggesting struggles with Netflix, her lawyer reportedly responded almost immediately with a formal denial. Quick, direct, and legal. That shows they are not afraid to act when needed. So naturally, people are now asking the obvious question. If legal action is an option, why hasn't it happened here? That question is everywhere right now. And it's not a simple one, because going to court is a completely different game compared to issuing a strong public statement. Legal experts point out something important. Tom Bauer's books are typically built on extensive research, multiple sources, and insider accounts. That doesn't mean everything in them is correct, but it does mean challenging it legally is not easy. Here's the risk. If Meghan and Harry decided to take legal action, they would have to prove that the claims are not just wrong, but knowingly false and damaging. That's a high bar. And once you step into a courtroom, everything gets examined, every detail, every source, every claim. That kind of process can open doors that some people might prefer to keep closed. And there's another angle that cannot be ignored. Lawsuits can sometimes backfire in a huge way. Instead of burying a story, they can throw it into the spotlight even more. More headlines, more attention, more curiosity. We've seen this pattern before with controversial books. Once legal drama enters the picture, sales often spike, and the story reaches an even wider audience. So now you've got this situation. A highly critical book is out. A strong public denial has been issued, but no legal move has followed. And that gap between reaction and action is exactly what people are analyzing right now. At the end of the day, some analysts are already calling this a PR misstep. Not because of what was said, but because of how it played out. The response was loud, sharp, and immediate. But instead of shutting the conversation down, it may have poured even more energy into it. More attention, more curiosity, more debate. And that's the twist in all of this. The intention may have been to discredit the book and move on. But the outcome? It looks like the story only got bigger. Now it's not just about what's inside the book. It's about the reaction, the strategy, and the questions that still haven't been answered. So now it comes down to you. Does Meghan Markle actually take this further and go after Tom Bauer legally? Or does this whole situation stay as a public battle with no courtroom involved? Drop your take in the comments because this one is wide open and people are split right down the middle. And if you want more stories like this, make sure you like, share, and hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next.